Welcome to Life Stories, where one broken car, one quiet act of kindness, and one rusted wrench sparked a chain reaction no one saw coming. Imagine risking everything you have to help a stranger, only to discover she holds the power to rebuild your life or quietly destroy it. This is not a story about money, fame, or luck. It's about a small-town mechanic haunted by loss, holding on to a dream the world has already let go of. And when the past returns wearing a smile and holding the deed to his future, he's faced with a choice that could tear him apart. Stay for what seems like a simple repair and watch it turn into a fight for legacy, redemption, and the quiet kind of love that never asks for attention. Now, step inside the garage where it all began. Ben Taylor wiped the sweat and grease from his brow just as the old Toyota Camry coughed its last breath and rolled into his cracked driveway. A thin trail of steam hissed out from under the hood, curling into the late afternoon sky like a ghost refusing to leave. The woman who stepped out looked like she'd been driving for years without stopping, eyes heavy with exhaustion, hair tied back in haphazard knot, jeans worn pale at the knees. She clutched a cracked phone like it was her last possession in the world. Ben didn't need to hear the words. He'd seen that look before. The mixture of pride and desperation, the quiet panic hiding behind a forced calm. Still, she whispered it anyway. "I don't have any money." He hesitated, glancing at his rusted toolbox, the sagging shop behind him, the final notice envelope peeking out from under a stack of unpaid invoices. He hadn't sold a decent job in weeks. The bank had called, twice that morning. But there was something about the way she stood there, like someone who hadn't slept or trusted anyone in a long, long time. Ben exhaled. "I didn't ask for any." What he didn't know, what he couldn't have known, was that in the act of helping a stranger with nothing to offer, he was rewriting the future in ways that would ripple through lives far beyond his dusty garage in Fayette Ridge. The town wasn't much. A forgotten dot in the Midwest, built on rust and grit, where folks worked until their backs gave out and pride often outweighed practicality. Ben's garage, inherited from his father, stood like a relic at the edge of town. Once it had been alive with clinking tools and laughter echoing off oil-stained walls. Now silence hung like a thick coat of dust, broken only by the groan of an ancient lift or the occasional cough of a dying engine. He didn't expect her to return. People like her rarely did. They said, "Thank you," with trembling hands and then vanished, swallowed up by whatever hardship brought them to his lot in the first place. But the next morning, just as Ben was draining the oil from an old truck, a sound broke the monotony, sleek, smooth, completely out of place. A black Rolls-Royce Phantom pulled up and parked like it belonged there. Ben stood frozen, wrench in hand, as a convoy of luxury vehicles followed. A silver Bentley, 2 G-Wagons, a Tesla with matte black finish. Fayette Ridge had never seen that kind of shine. Not even the mayor drove anything newer than a 2008 Ford. From the back of the Rolls, the woman stepped out. But this wasn't the same girl who had whispered shame into the gravel. Her hair was styled, her coat tailored, her posture regal. She walked like someone used to marble floors in rooms where people waited for her to speak. Ben's gut twisted. "Emily?" She smiled gently. "Avery, actually. Avery Whitmore." Time stopped. Everyone knew that name. Whitmore Industries, real estate, tech, fashion, pharmaceuticals. They were the American aristocracy, and standing in front of him was their heiress, the girl he'd fixed a radiator for and sent on her way with nothing but a nod. "I didn't lie," she said, reading the suspicion in his eyes. "That day I had no money. I left everything behind on purpose." Ben said nothing. His brain hadn't caught up. "I was looking for someone who didn't have a price tag," she continued. "Someone real, and you helped me like it meant something. No expectations, no angle." A man in a pressed suit stepped forward, handed Ben a folder. Inside were contracts, blueprints, a full renovation plan, new equipment, solar roofing, a business grant that dwarfed anything he'd earned in the last decade. Avery wasn't just offering gratitude, she was offering a resurrection. Ben's hands trembled. "Why me?" Avery stepped closer, her eyes steady. "Because when no one was watching, you did the right thing. That matters more than any resume. And now I want to build something with you. something bigger than just fixing cars. Ben looked past her, at the machines lined up like modern knights, the curious neighbors peeking from porches, the edge of a town holding its breath. Something inside him cracked wide open. That night, as the wind hummed through the rafters of his failing shop, Ben sat alone in the dark, staring at the folder on his kitchen table. It felt radioactive, glowing with possibility, humming with risk. The numbers were real. The plans were real. Avery Whitmore was real. And yet the question clawed at him. What if this was all a dream designed to expose how much he dared to want more? But he knew the answer. He could feel it in his bones. What would you do if a single moment of kindness suddenly unlocked a future you never believed you deserved? Have you ever made a choice, quiet, unacknowledged, that ended up changing everything? Because when Ben walked back into his garage the next morning, nothing, not the creaking lift, not the smell of oil, would ever be the same again. And the truth behind Avery's real mission was only just beginning to unfold. By sunrise, the quiet corner of Fayette Ridge buzzed like it hadn't in decades. A team of engineers, contractors, and architects swept through Ben's aging garage like a storm of precision. Clipboards clicked, tape measures stretched. The air smelled of fresh lumber, sparks, and coffee brewed too strong. Ben stood among it all like a ghost in his own life, unsure where to place his hands. Avery arrived in a modest electric car, dressed in jeans and a plain navy sweater, blending in like she'd always belonged. "I want this place to thrive," she told him, her voice gentle but firm. "But more than that, I want you to lead something that outlives you." Ben tried to smile, but the words weighed on him. Thrive? Outlive? He'd barely been able to keep his lights on last month. He wasn't a leader, just a man with grease under his fingernails and a stubborn habit of showing up. Then came the twist. Avery handed him a sealed envelope. "This came through my legal office this morning," she said. "I thought you should see it before we go any further." Ben opened it with calloused fingers. Inside, a thick letterhead from a major bank. He scanned the words. Froze. A lien. Filed 18 months ago. Your father's final loan remains unsettled. His stomach dropped. He looked up at her, confused. "I paid everything off when he passed. Cleared the books." She shook her head. "Apparently, he took out another line of credit a year before the shop was signed over. It never processed in the title paperwork. Somehow, no one caught it." Ben's hands trembled. The bank now had a legal claim on the land, on everything. Even the renovations wouldn't matter. They could seize it all. "I'll fight this," he said through clenched teeth. "There's got to be a way." But Avery was already on her phone, pacing. "There might be. My legal team's looking into it, but there's another option." Ben's jaw tensed. "What option?" Her voice softened. "Let it go. Move the vision elsewhere. I have a property 20 minutes outside of town. Bigger, cleaner slate, no debt. We build the training center there instead." Let it go, just like that. Walk away from the shop his father built with his bare hands, the place where Ben learned to hold a wrench before he could ride a bike. Memories in every rusted beam and oil-stained tile. That garage was his father's soul. And maybe his too. But Avery pressed. "This is bigger than you, Ben. Than this building. Think of the kids we could reach, the families." He wanted to shout, "You think I haven't?" He'd already envisioned it all. The name Taylor Auto and Community Garage, glowing under LED lights, teens finding purpose beneath those rafters, the spirit of a man long gone reborn in every act of kindness. And now, a legal technicality threatened to erase it all. Later that night, alone in the shop, Ben sat on the concrete floor back against the wall. The new equipment gleamed under temporary work lights, untouched. In his lap, an old photograph. Him as a boy, standing next to his father in front of the garage, smiling, tools in hand, dust in the air. His throat tightened. This wasn't just about buildings. It was about legacy, about promises unspoken between father and son. But another voice haunted him too, the cracked voice of a teenage boy earlier that week. Jaden, the first kid who'd asked to learn. "Can I stay here for a while, even if I'm not fixing anything?" The kid had looked like a tossed coin, spinning in the air, waiting to land. Ben had said yes. That boy had come back every day since. Ben's choice wasn't between a building and a vision. It was between the past and the future. The next morning, The town awoke to find Ben on the roof of the garage, repainting the faded Taylor Auto sign by hand. Reporters started showing up. Locals brought coffee. Rumors swirled, the bank's taking it. He's refusing to budge. He's making a stand. Avery returned just after noon, this time walking alone. She watched him for a long while before speaking. Still planning to fight it? Ben climbed down the ladder slowly. You bet. She studied him. Then I'll fight it with you. He blinked. What? You're not just holding onto a garage, Ben. You're holding onto something people can believe in. She took a breath. But there's something else you should know. The lien, it wasn't just a mistake. It was intentional. Someone bought your father's debt. They've been sitting on it, waiting. Ben's stomach clenched. Who? I don't know yet, but I will. Ben looked out across the gravel lot, now scattered with scaffolding and sparks, then back at Avery's steady gaze. Beneath his frustration, a new emotion stirred, resolve sharpened by betrayal. This wasn't just about memory anymore. Someone wanted to erase what he was building. They'd have to go through him first. Would you risk everything to protect something no one else understands but you? Because just as the foundation began to rise, Ben discovered that the real battle had nothing to do with concrete or cars. Someone was working in the shadows to tear it all down. And that someone might already be closer than he thinks. The morning sky over Fayette Ridge stretched wide and pale, clouds drifting like tired thoughts. Inside the half-renovated shop, Ben Taylor stared at the letter that had arrived in a plain envelope without return address. One sentence had changed everything. The lien has been sold to a private party. All legal rights transferred. And underneath, a name that shouldn't have shocked him, but did. Clay Turner. The name echoed through his memory like the hum of an old engine. His father's former business partner, the man who walked away a decade ago, selling his half of the shop during the crash, just months before Ben's father died trying to keep it afloat. Clay hadn't been seen since. Rumor had it he struck gold in Chicago. Real estate, fast money, flashy suits. Now he'd returned, quietly buying the past one signature at a time. That evening, Clay arrived in person. He stepped out of a black Escalade like he was stepping onto a movie set, hair too neat, smile too clean. He didn't shake Ben's hand. I always told your old man this place was a dead investment, he said, voice smug. Looks like you're proving me right. But listen, your name's still on the lease, barely. I'll give you a way out. Take a check, walk away. You can build that shiny little dream project somewhere else. Ben's jaw tightened. This place is mine. Clay chuckled. You think that means something? Nostalgia doesn't pay bills, and I've got the deed. Avery stepped forward, calm and unflinching. We'll see what a judge says about that. But Clay leaned in closer to Ben, voice dropping. Or you can keep your pride and lose everything. Me? I'll just bulldoze it, turn it into condos, maybe name the development Taylor Lofts. Wouldn't that be sweet? For a long moment, Ben said nothing. Then, quietly, you always did love the sound of your own name. Clay walked away smiling, and the storm that followed came fast. News broke that a legal battle had begun over the shop. Construction was halted, permits frozen. The town, once cheering Ben's miracle, now murmured doubts. Why fight so hard for a broken-down garage? Why not just start over? Donations slowed. Reporters stopped calling. But the teens didn't. Jaden came every day, then others. They worked without orders, sanding benches, sorting tools, writing hopeful messages in chalk across the dusty floor. We believe in this. Don't give up. And then came the letter from the county clerk. Ben opened it under a flickering light bulb, hands shaking. A page of legal jargon, but one sentence stood out, searing into his chest. A technicality in the original lien filing nullifies the transfer of ownership. Clay's purchase was invalid. The garage was still Ben's. He sank into a chair, the paper trembling in his grip. Avery arrived moments later, breathless, reading his expression like an open book. She smiled, not the polished heiress smile, but something quiet, real. We won. Ben's voice cracked. We didn't just win, we kept it alive. The next weeks moved like wildfire. The crew returned, so did the headlines. Donors who had disappeared came back with interest. Avery, true to her word, brought in the full mentorship funding, but it wasn't the headlines that mattered. It was the moment when Ben looked out from the front door of the now glass-fronted Taylor Auto and Community Garage and saw not just teens learning, but parents dropping them off with hope in their eyes. Old veterans came in just to talk. A single mom brought in her car and left with more than a fixed transmission. She left with someone who listened. And one night, long after the last car left the lot, Ben stood beneath the stars again. Avery joined him, her coat pulled tight against the spring wind. "You ever think about what it might have looked like if you had walked away?" she asked. "All the time," he said, "but I would have never known what we could be." A moment passed. Then she handed him a new envelope. "This isn't legal," she said. "It's personal." He opened it. Inside was a deed, not to the garage, but to 10 acres of land just beyond the ridge. Avery's note was short. "For the next step, yours, always." He didn't say anything. He just held it against his chest and closed his eyes. The official opening of the garage drew hundreds. Press, city council, families, kids who had nowhere else to go now wore coveralls with pride. Jaden stood beside Ben that day, tall and proud in a borrowed suit. When asked what he'd learned from Ben, he answered, "He taught me how to fix cars, but more than that, he showed me what it means to stay when everyone else leaves." Months later, as spring settled in, Ben sat alone one night at the edge of the 10-acre property. Wildflowers bent in the breeze. The land was quiet, waiting. He'd build again, something bigger, something lasting. But he knew now, legacies weren't built with concrete or chrome. They were built in the choices we make when no one's watching. The wrench in his hand, the boy beside him, the garage behind him. Every dent, every scar, every small kindness stitched into something no fire or greed could erase. And somewhere, in a city far away, Clay Turner would see his empire grow taller, but none of it would ever be home. How did this story touch your heart? We'd love to hear what part stayed with you the most. Comment 100 if you felt inspired by this story. Tell us, where are you watching from? If this story moved you, share it with a friend who believes in second chances. Thank you for watching Life Stories.